Welcome to Body Bags, presented by the Kokomo Lantern. My name is Jeremy Geiger, and I'm one of the co-owners and the funeral directors here at City of First Cremation. So this episode, I kind of want to talk to you veterans out there. I know I've kind of talked about some benefits for you guys, but I want to go into some funeral experiences in regards to military burials, military funeral services, and things that I as a funeral director and I as a family member have experienced and encountered. So there are different types of burial that we can experience through the military. Typically we see veterans, they do a traditional earth burial, and most of them go in a private cemetery. And when I mean like a private cemetery, it could be a city owned, it could be actually privately owned with a board of directors. But I mean by a public cemetery, I'm sorry, not a public cemetery, by a military cemetery, it's a national cemetery. And here in Indiana, our closest one is the Marion National Cemetery. But most states have a national cemetery where you can be buried with other veterans. They do allow the spouse to be a part of that. And if you're a veteran and you lose a child before they become a legal adult, they can be buried at that national cemetery as well. Some of the things have changed there at these national cemeteries where they've learned that cremation's accelerating and it's becoming a more popular choice. So they've built columbariums, which are like miniature mausoleums for urns to go inside. And they put a small bronze plate on the outside of it. They are still burying cremated remains. They do ask the families if they want them buried or entombed. I think it's really neat though when we get out there to those cemeteries, seeing the symmetry of the lines, how perfect they are, and when you look at them on the diagonals, how they're just, it's amazing how well they are placed into that area. And because I go to the cemeteries a lot, and the rows aren't very straight, and you don't see the symmetry that you do at the national cemeteries, which is impressive. But other types of burials that are in there outside of that earth and cremation niche or entombment and burial, some Navy veterans are entitled to burial at sea still. Some of these things that are eligible for you as a veteran also depends on your rank and qualification for your discharge as well. So I've never been a part of a Navy burial. I've had a family tell me of their experience of it, and it was pretty interesting. Typically they're using a Ziegler case, which is like a metal casket, or they're using a 20 gauge sealed casket. They will put holes in the bottom of these caskets or containers so that way they can fill with water and actually sink. The last thing you need is to be on the coast of Miami and you see Fred bobbing along. That would be terrible. And they have a requirement of so many miles off of the coast and things like that. So those are kind of the types of burials that I typically see through the military. When we're talking about experiences in the actual funeral service, typically the funeral home will line up military honors, and depending on how the death was, if you were active in service, typically you're going to see the local VFW or American Legion in presence, but then you'll see the active branch of service as well, and they'll usually bring an honor and a color guard team to kind of stand at the casket. They will present flags, the branch of service, and typically United States flags, and then there may be two soldiers posted up, one at the head and foot end, as protection to the family and the deceased. They don't play around. You cannot be disrespectful. These guys usually, guys and girls, they come in a team. They'll work in rotation, so that way they don't have to stand for great periods of time. Typically, I see them go for no more than 30 minutes. Typically, it's a 15-minute rotation that I see. I also like to try to be prepared for those service members that come, to give them an opportunity of a place to sit and recover, and not be maybe asked so many questions about why they're doing what they're doing, and where did they come from, and what branch of service are you in. Because it is an exhausting day for them to be up and down, and to make sure that they're being very meticulous on their tradition, whether it's making sure their outfit is meticulous and the brass is polished, or if it's the folding and presenting of the flag, or holding the flag and making sure that it doesn't touch the ground and that the true colors are all showing. So those are kind of some of the things in the honor teams. When I'm out at the cemetery, typically if it's an active member of service, I see 7 to 10 members of the active branch come to fold and present and play taps and do the rifle squad. Typically, I would just see a couple of the VFW or Legion guys to support them. On you retired veterans that are out there, what does that look like? What does that feel like for your family? At that point, again, it comes upon your rank. When I call into requests for military honors, if they're going to choose to send an honor team to be at the funeral home, or if they'll just be at the cemetery. Most retirees, I see that they come to the cemetery or the funeral home, and they just do a folding and presentation of the flag, and the VFW and the Legion support them with more people that will hold the colors of the flag, and then play taps, and then the firing squad. When we talk about a firing squad, you know that it's always 21 volleys. Most people think that there's 21 people out there shooting 3 times, and it's not. It's just 3 volleys. They typically have 7. Sometimes it's more or less. It just depends. You have to also take into consideration that these veteran groups that are coming to support the active branch of service, they're typically retired gentlemen. So they don't have maybe a work schedule, and they choose to volunteer through the Legion or the VFW to be a part of this honor team. I think that most of these individuals don't do this because they're looking for something to do with their time. I think they've been impacted by a loss, and they seen how these military rites were performed, and they thought, wow, I want to be a part of it, because it is such a special ceremony. I was talking with Kim earlier today about this topic, and I guess my point to drive home on this is, just because you're a veteran and you weren't maybe on the front line, or you weren't involved in a wartime, but you still served in the military, it's not just one person that's the military. It takes a very large group of you to be able to protect our rights and our freedoms in our country. So even though your job may have been minor, it's very great in the grand scheme of things. And when you pass away and you're a veteran, it's the most high honor of respect that organization can give back to you for your time of service. They are so greatly appreciative and respectful for what you did and committed for our country and our rights and freedoms, that it touches those, and they choose to be on that team because they want to make that impact on the next families that they would get to serve. So that's what I see on those honor teams. They're all amazing to work with. I just really enjoy hearing some of these veterans, and it's interesting to see the interactions with these retired veterans through the VFW and the Legion when they see maybe their branch of service. If they were a Marine and they're serving a Marine and they get 2 active Marines to come and be a part of it, and they got all kinds of awesome questions that I get to hear them ask about whether it's boot camp, whether it's some of their technical training, where did they serve, where are you stationed, do you have other family members that are involved? All those great, crazy questions to hear. I think it's super cool to hear those connections, because it's important, and hopefully it sets up for them when they retire that they get to continue it on. My dad is a veteran. He kind of had the viewpoint that kind of disappointed me. He served in Operation Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom, but he felt that his role wasn't important, and he kind of said, I don't know about military rights when I pass. And I said, oh, absolutely. You will upset your brothers and sisters in the military by not giving them the right to say goodbye to you in their way. And their way is playing the taps. It's the 21 gun salute. It's presenting the colors of our country. It's incredible to see. I think it's important that you let them do that. I have had families that maybe are a little sensitive to gunfire, where maybe we chose not to have the 21 gun salute. We just left that portion out, and they were okay with that. Things that you may also get to see or encounter when you're working with a veteran family, and things that you may want to know as a consumer. As a honorably discharged veteran, you get a burial flag. We get our burial flags from the post office here in Kokomo. You get a headstone. When you're talking burials at the national cemeteries, they take care of the monument and headstones with the family. It's going to have to be uniform to what's out there. So if we're talking the white upright marble headstones and you wanted a flat bronze, sorry, you're getting the white marble one that goes there so it looks like everybody else's. But on the private side of it, making sure that your funeral home is aware that this is a veteran, here are the discharge paperwork, because you are entitled to a veteran's marker. Each county in the state of Indiana gives us money towards the burial and the placement of the headstone or marker that would be there. So we've got a couple of different options on what those headstones would look like out at the cemetery. Typically on the private side, in my years of experience, the family, they've bought that space, like they've been planning for us. They typically will have a headstone. So then all of a sudden I throw the monkey wrench in there of, whoa, hold on, we've got to get a veteran's marker. And then we're looking at the monument. Sometimes they've planned ahead and they left a big enough spot on the back where we can put a big 12-inch by 24-inch bronze marker. Other times it was like, doggone, completely forgot about that, or I didn't realize that we were entitled to that marker. And then we're doing a smaller bronze marker for them. Other families, they kind of like that they don't have to worry about the expense of a headstone, that the government was able to provide that to them. There are some fees that go to the installation, and like I mentioned, the county does give us some money towards that installation of the marker. Typically it covers most of it. There's just a small amount that may be owed afterwards. There's reimbursements that we can get for you. These reimbursements can be that county burial or headstone allowance, or there could be some federal benefits for you. A lot of it really depends on how long you served and what your discharge was and your rank. The longer you were, the higher the rank you were, more benefits and opportunities that kind of open up for you. But they do offer some good resources for us funeral directors. Here in Kokomo, I speak with our veterans officer quite a bit with some of the families that we serve. That way I'm making sure that they're getting everything they're due and owed for their service. And some of our families, they're already in there and they've made those relationships, and they're asking me and making sure that hey, did you go over there and file the $200 burial allowance with them? Oh, I absolutely did. Oh, okay. Well, they mentioned the headstone. Did you get a headstone? Yeah, I did, and I'll send that over to them as well so they can see it's been filed. These people are always so helpful to work with. They're great resources for you veterans to go in there and just ask questions about, to see, is there a program that they can help or facilitate for you to get you the resources that you need. So some of my experiences with the military have just been as the funeral director side. It's not really been too many times as a family member, but I think it's really interesting to kind of talk about some of the complexity to these services. When I kind of think of these things, I think of my former father-in-law had a very simple funeral service, and military rites, it was just the playing of taps, the folding of the flag, and a 21-gun salute. And then I think of another friend that passed, and Jared, he passed away in Iraq in a convoy, and his service was much more detailed, not just on the religious aspect and the aspect of a young gentleman passing away in such a tragic accident, but the complexity of the anticipating of receiving the remains. They fly into the Indianapolis airport. I've been the funeral director that's just showed up and picked them up, and we came back. And Jared's instance, he flew in and he was escorted by his honor team. The funeral home received him at the airport. They went in a motorcade back to Miami County with full police escorts. We were all there at the funeral home waiting for him to arrive. We were told we weren't going to get to see him. We got to see him. But Jared didn't just come by himself. He had an honor team that was with him. And that honor team was to make sure the condition of Jared's body and casket was to the highest level of acceptance. They were also there to talk about benefits with the family about Jared's passing. They were there to help the funeral home coordinate with the local VFW and American Legion for their military honor portions of it. They didn't have to file for a flag. Jared's military honor team came with the flag. So the complexity can be very great. Obviously, Jared's situation, he passed away in action. So knowing that all these moving parts are taking place is kind of interesting to see. As a family member, you're not really aware of what these conversations are and how hectic it may be for that funeral director of getting notified of, great, we've got 12 veterans that are coming and we need to have a lounge set up for them with snacks. We need to get a TV, maybe a recliner or a cot for them to take a nap. I know in Jared's case that they stayed with his body until he was laid to rest. So this honor team stayed at the funeral home 24 hours a day until he was buried. I don't think most families put into the thought of the logistics of what that does. You know, those service members, they've left their families to be with your family. So it was really hard situation. Very impactful. I've done a couple of large veterans funerals with some high dignitaries in attendance. It's just really neat to see the level of respect from the veterans groups to those that are actively serving, showing love and support to the family. But it's super important for you veterans to utilize these things. I know you may not agree or you think you're entitled to it, but you are. You absolutely are. So let us family members and funeral directors help with some of that. I get maybe the timing of it may not be the best for you. You know, it might be too hard to hear playing of taps right now. Just know that you can come back to those services later and have that done. Most veteran groups are pretty open to some of that thought process. They know how impactful it is to those, and it leads to other opportunities. You know, we may be talking young children and they hear this and see this ceremony performed, and now they've got an interest that they knew Uncle Bob served in the Army, and I want that kind of funeral. I want that kind of prestige and recognition for that funeral service. So that's kind of my topics of military funerals, honors, some of the experiences that we've seen and encountered. Yeah. So to leave you with a veteran story. I had a different one that was down, but I think this one's pretty funny. I need something to kind of crack me up. So here I was working in Peru. Probably 17, 18 years old. I had the responsibility to run the flowers out to the cemetery for burial. And I was also to take a flag and drop it off to get it pressed earlier in the week for this funeral ceremony. So I got the flag picked up earlier in the week. I didn't understand what was going on with that, why it needed to be pressed. I learned eventually that it just looks much nicer. Even if I'm going to turn around and fold that flag back into a triangle, it looks nicer if I have it pressed and then fold it. So we folded it into the triangle shape, and they had it on top of the casket. I helped them load into the funeral coach. I hustled out my flowers, and this is in the county for a burial at the cemetery. First time there, they took me earlier in the week when I dropped the flag off. I thought I was pretty comfortable of where this cemetery was. Come to find out, I was not very comfortable. I am zipping up and down these county roads looking for this turnoff. Can't find anything. Thought for sure I'd run into them in procession heading to the cemetery. I end up showing up, find it. They're all in line, caskets placed on the lowering device, and I'm running up with the casket spray. As I'm setting some of the flowers, I hear one of the veteran group members ask me if I had an extra flag. No, I had one flag. I said it was pressed and we folded it. Where'd it go? Well, the family seen it on top of the casket, and they thought you were gonna just bury it and they took it off and they left it at the church. Oh dear. I said, no, I don't have an extra flag. And they said, well, we have a practice flag, but I don't want to give it to them. Can we just fold this flag and then you send somebody back to the church to get the right flag? So I don't know. And they said, well, can you ask the funeral director? So I kind of go up, and as they're doing their committal, and I said, hey Bob, the military is asking where the flag is. They said that it got left. Yeah, I know. Tell me you got a flag in the car. Said, no, when did we start carrying flags in the car? I don't know. I was just hoping you'd have one in there. Said, no, they mentioned something about their practice flag. Well, damn it, that'll have to do. So they did finish with their committal. Then we let the military team come up to do their military portion. I learned what a practice flag was. It's a beautiful flag. It's a normal size flag, but it's been practiced with. So it's not perfect. It's not pristine. It's not pressed. It's not worn out by any means, but it's just not the most beautiful flag that you've ever seen. And they use that to fold and present to the family and give to them. They thought that was theirs after it finished, and everybody was dismissed. We loaded the family into the car, and we said, hey, we're going to need that flag back. John ran to the church and got the flag that you left on the table that you thought we were burying. They're like, yeah, we thought maybe we were going to get two or something. We didn't know what was going on. So we're going to have them refold this flag, and then we'll give it to you at the church. So that was the funny, unique story of, one, get comfortable with where that cemetery is. If it was a few days, drive by it that night before, that morning of. Always run that path again. Get familiar with it. You never know what's going to happen. And two, probably the most important out of those, is get you an extra burial flag and put it behind the driver's seat, because it's not the first time I've ever ran into the situation where I needed another burial flag, whether we loaded up at the funeral home and drove to the church and left the flag, or now all of a sudden we need a second flag, even though you're entitled to one. Sometimes I've had to give out two flags, and it's a tough one to have a discussion when you've got two children or a child and a spouse, and they both should definitely be honored with a flag. But yeah, that's a veteran benefit that may need to be looked at a little closer, but I understand that it's tough to kind of give everybody a flag. But that does conclude my services here today at City of First Cremation. As always, like, follow, and subscribe to Kokomo Lantern. Thank you. Goodbye.